Hello everyone, Foregrip here, just back in with another video. Yes, it's been a while, I know. Has my hair changed in that time? This is going to be a video review on the Worker Seagull. Let's go right into it, and I'm not going to shoot my prime bottles behind there, I'm going to shoot that. Woo! There's going to be a kick to it, hasn't it? Let's start with what's in the box. So in the box you get, obviously, the Seagull Blaster. You get your full metal top rail that is disconnected. You get these two iron sights, which are actually pretty cool. You get your foregrip, which is not this one. It's on the Harrier. You get your Kalashnikov style foregrip. You get your two stubby little side rails. You get your standard Worker injection molded scar barrel. The short barrel is already installed in the blaster, and then you get a longer barrel included, and this longer barrel is actually the same barrel as the Harrier's shorter barrel. So, yeah. If you already have a Harrier, you'll already have that barrel. And then you get a spring. This is the weak spring. I have the strong one installed. 1.4 200, and then the 1.4 250 is inside of the blaster right now. And they have a little shrink wrap on the end. And I'll explain what that's for later on. Oh yeah, and you also get your Dragon Claw style mag. This is a regular Talon mag. Again, I'll explain more about this later. But first, I'll go from tip to end because that's logical. Up here we have the scar barrel. It just friction fits onto the end of the barrel like that. This one actually friction fits and stays on, unlike the Harrier. It was always too loose, and they've always really been too loose on these barrels. But now, I think Worker have changed the tolerances a little bit, and now it actually stays on there. And the barrel is this stubby little dude out here. It is a 210mm barrel. And then the upgrade one is 260. It's the same one that's included with the Harrier, the shorter Harrier barrel. And this dude can just unscrew from the dart gate just like the Harrier. Keep in mind when unscrewing and taking out the barrel, the return spring here will bind up a little bit, and it won't like dislodge or anything, but it will be a little bit annoying to reinsert barrels, just keep that in mind. Up here we have our front iron sight, same thing as with the rear. These are mock fibre optic. They look super cool in the sun. They're not real fibre optics, they don't look quite as good, but the rear one is adjustable windage. And they just clamp onto the rail with one screw here and two screws here, and they're included with the blaster, and they're quite good for included sights. I used these for the accuracy test and they worked. And we have our big top rail, same deal as the Harrier. This one's obviously just shorter, and you bolt it in with 4 screws, and if you want to take apart the blaster, you'll take out 2, and then take out these 2 screws if you want to disassemble the blaster. But again, I will show that later in the video. Down here is our foregrip. This is not the one that's included. This is just a random stubby one that I found. But the included one bolts on nice and easy, and if you don't want the included one, obviously, you can just swap it out with whatever foregrip you want, because there's Picatinny under here. The 2 side rails come in the blaster as well, and they bolt on just like they do with the Harrier, except they are much smaller. I'm not going to be putting anything onto these because I don't think I have anything that fits onto these. Alright, this is also the prime action. That's how you prime the blaster. That's how you fire. And if you noticed, the Seagull is quite a bit quieter than the Harrier, and that's what the spring deal is about, and I'll explain that in a little bit. On these 2 sides you have the 2 body pins. This is what you take out to disassemble the blaster or split it into 2 halves. This is not compatible with the Harrier's front end. If you want to swap it with the Harrier for some reason, you cannot do that. Also, the 2 screws here are shorter than the Harrier, so if you want to use the Harrier screws, which are M330, I believe, you cannot. These are look to be about M318s maybe, but they're shorter. Here's the mag well. It's got a cool little slant to it. I'll explain why that's a little bit of an issue. Standard mag. This is the included Dragon Claw mag. It's a 15-round Talon mag. It's frosted, which feels cool. This is my favourite Talon mag by far, just because it looks cool. Inserts into the blaster pretty nicely. It is a little bit tight. It won't gravity drop at all. That's not really an issue to me. But what was an issue for me is that this blaster is not compatible with the Harrier mag. That little slant that I was talking about earlier bumps into the mag and it won't seat. I find that a little bit weird. I don't really care because I don't use these mags, but yeah, it doesn't fit. Mag release is right here. It's the exact same as the Harrier. I feel like it has a little bit less draw, but it's the exact same as the Harrier. And then here's the trigger. The trigger does feel a little bit stiffer than the Harrier, but still quite nice. Nice to pull. It's the exact same trigger style as the Harrier. I keep comparing this to the Harrier. And then you have the safety. If it's protruding on this side, that means it's safe. Push it in, you can fire. The trigger is quite nice. It's the same feeling as the Harrier. If you've pulled the trigger on the Harrier, this feels identical. It's the same hair trigger style, which is an issue for longevity for the catch and plunger style, because they will break if you do put the extremely high powered 1.6 Harrier springs in this. That's why there are SABRE parts available for the internals, which I will talk about later. But the trigger is nice. It doesn't have slam fire or anything. That was a speculation on the Seagull that it would have slam fire. It does not. But it means that you can deprime the blaster like that, which is super handy. Or you can just plug the barrel and do that. It does have a very good air seal. Workers seem to be good at doing air seals with their blasters. Here's the trigger guard. It is a separate piece of metal that you can take out with 2 screws here if you for some reason don't want to have a trigger guard. I love the way that they did this. I didn't like the trigger guard on the Harrier. It had this weird sort of like gap in there which would always mess with my middle finger when I held the blaster in the air. Ow! See? And the Harrier came with a stupid handguard that I immediately took off. The Seagull does not have that handguard. I'm so grateful for that. Instead, they have an actual useful piece of tech under here. A sling mount. A sling mount, which is the same metal that's used everywhere else. This gunmetal grey. Feels nice. And if you, for some reason, want to take it off, there is 2 screws underneath this rubber thing, and you can just take it off if you want. Speaking of the rubber thing, it goes over the grip, same as the Harrier. If you've held a Harrier, it feels the same. Very, very nice, textured, awesome. Thank you, Worker, for keeping this grip style. It's lovely. It's good for my giant hand, and it might be a little bit strange for a kid's hand to hold on to this just because it's so beefy and thick around this area. But it's comfortable for the older people, and this blaster is really intended for older people. Even though it is so small, it still shoots hard. And this is the buffer tube back here. It has this weird little stock on here which you can take off with 1 screw there, and it will just pop off like that. This is not really a stock at all, it's just a hook really. Goes on the end like that, and you can hook it off stuff, but it's so tiny, like no one's going to be able to use that. It's smaller than a Retaliator stock. It's miniature. But thankfully you can take it off and just whack on a much better stock if you want. Just any mil-spec buffer tubes will fit onto here just fine. And I'm keeping this on. I really don't like this stock. And underneath here there is a little hole for the Allen key. That's where it will be as standard with the stupid hook stock. But if you want to put an actual good stock on here, you'll need to move the Allen key back to its original position in the buffer tube, just like the Harrier. And that's just the same Allen key. That's to undo these 2 screws and the top rail. Alright, I believe that is all of the blaster. Well, all the externals anyway. Let's go out and see it on the range. Worker Seagull, aka Chip Thief, with the biggest included spring and the shortest barrel with the scar barrel on the end. This is how I feel most people would use it. Alright, let's go. Woo. That is landing in the exact same spot every time. Oh, I was aiming for that tiny little piece of, I don't even think you can see it because the trampoline thing's in the way. That tiny little piece of metal over there, and it hit it. As you can see, it shoots laser beams. This is by far my most accurate blaster that I have. It's super consistent. It doesn't shoot as hard as the Harrier, even though it does have a stronger prime. That's to be expected because it's smaller plunger volume. But it still is so consistent, super accurate, great for CQB because it never misses the target. If the target isn't too far away. The short barrel and the weak spring will be hitting about 150, 160 FPS. With the same spring with the long barrel, not much more because just the longer barrel doesn't really benefit the blaster with the weaker spring. With the stronger spring though and the small barrel, it's shooting about 180, and when you upgrade to the longer barrel, about 190. Once again, not really benefiting from that long barrel. And talking about the internals, let's start with the spring first. The springs come with these little bits of heat shrink, and that is for quieting the blaster down. As you heard from the firing demo and from the intro, this blaster is a lot This blaster is a lot quieter than the Harrier. Let's just have a quick sound comparison, shall we? The Harrier has the same style spring in this. It's a different spring, but it's shooting about 190, just like the Seagull. Much different there. So Worker designed... Where the heck did I put it? So Worker designed these springs to... well, the heat shrink on the end dampens the spring. So as you heard in the Harrier, it fires and then you can hear the rest of the spring just clashing against the shell. This heat shrink is meant to stop it, and it does a pretty good job at that. Good job, Worker, with these new springs. And why I've been comparing this to a Harrier all this time? Well, it basically is a Harrier. It's a shortened Harrier. Literally. The catch and plunger are the exact same. I was talking about the sabre parts earlier that you can get for the Harrier. Well, those exact sabre parts for the Harrier will drop in to the Seagull, no mods at all. They're exactly the same. Like the plunger and catch in this blaster and the Harrier, identical. The plunger tube is identical, it is just a couple inches shorter. And obviously the slide and the pusher and everything all the same as well, but obviously just the priming bars here are just obviously shorter because the length of pull there is not much. Okay, now to my opinion of this blaster, and compare it to the Harrier as well. It costs a little bit less than a Harrier. It is still more expensive than something like a Nexus Pro or a Max Strike or whatever, but this is on a whole nother level than those. Those are still kind of toy grade, this is hobby grade. Yeah, if you're looking to get into the foam dart blasting community and to competitively fling foam, I think the Seagull is a fantastic blaster. The Chip Thief really does shine in CQB, and I feel like what most people play. Looking around the internet, I feel most people play 150 to 200 FPS competitive games and indoor and skirmish fields and stuff with CQC, and that's what most people play. And I feel like the Harrier will. I feel like the Seagull will shine mostly there, compared to the Harrier, which can do a lot harder FPS, a lot easier because of its larger plunger volume and its longer prime stroke. I feel like most people are going to want to choose the Seagull over the Harrier. I play 300 FPS games, so I'm still keeping my Harrier and my Kirin. But for 200 FPS games and what most people play, I would say pick up the Seagull instead. It's smaller, it's cheaper, it comes with these dope irons. It's super accurate out of the box, and it hits hard enough out of the box for most people, I would feel. You can pump these up to above 200 FPS, but I really don't advise that. If you want something that shoots over 200, I'd get a Harrier instead, because it will do it out of the box and a little bit easier too. Hope you enjoyed this review. If it was handy, then please do leave a like and subscribe to the channel, because there will actually be videos on the channel from now. And apart from that, stay tactical, everybody. It's not loaded. I always do that. Stay tactical, everyone, and I'll see you in the next one. Ooh, that's spicy! Yeah, but nah, seriously, has my hair changed? Still recording, thank God. Running out of storage, sorry, we stopped recording halfway through the video. Nope.